So the Fiesta Bowl, Boise State versus Penn State. Joe, Penn State coming off the victory against SMU. Boise State having the first round bye. Your thoughts on how this game's going to go?
Look,
here we
Boise
go.
State has had a very – and, like, I'm removing the annoyance from this of how, like, Boise State fans are trying to dunk on me and they're all bookmarking me saying that Boise State's going to get smoked in this game. This is the level-headed take on expectations for this. And I said this, by the way, I in college and you as well. And one of the things that, like, one of the few things that pisses me off is that when I try to bring up my playing experience, people go, "Oh, you were a long snapper." Well, buddy, when you were sitting on, in a frat house drinking beer on Saturdays, I was out there playing football games against Virginia Tech and Kansas and Central Michigan and the University of Ohio. There's a difference. If you think that what I did and you did is the same, it's not. You weren't up at 5 a.m. for workouts in the winter. You weren't out there at practice or sitting on 10-hour bus rides. You weren't. You were goofing around. You graduated with a 2.9, and you're just pissed off about your current situation, so you're taking it out on me. Now, the whole big thing here that I'm trying to point out is when I played against a team like Virginia Tech, a bad Virginia Tech team that had Caleb Presley and Christian Darrisaw on it, it was so freaking noticeable, the difference in the size of those guys and the talent of those guys, that I ran down on punt against that wanted to take my head off, compared to the ones I went up against at the University of Ohio, which was a really good Ohio team that year. Curtis Rourke's brother was the quarterback, and Curtis Rourke might have been – no, I forget. I think it was Curtis Rourke's brother, and he kicked our ass. But, again, I understand and have literally been on the field. I'm not talking about what I've seen on TV. I've been on the field against these guys. There is, with some of the best G5 teams in the country, an enormous talent gap between them and the best P4 teams in the country. This is not 2021 Cincinnati. That is one of the greatest G5 teams we've ever seen. They beat a Notre Dame team.
They had Big Ten type talent.
They did. That's my whole point. They beat Notre Dame and they beat Indiana. And except for a couple of close games, they dominated their schedule.
They went toe-to-toe with Bama and were a red zone shot away, from making that a game. By the way, a national title contending Bama.
That roster was loaded with a bunch of guys that went on to the NFL that were high draft picks. Mm-hmm. This team has one guy and a couple of late rounders. They're not the same quality of team. I say all of this to say that it is an incredible uphill battle for a team like Boise State to beat Penn State. More importantly, they do not have on defense the bodies that, even if Penn State starts slow like they did against SMU, to be able to turn them off if this did get into a close shootout. You're not going to be able to win this football game. I think as an enjoyer of football and as an appreciator of having been at the FCS level, look, the underdog stuff's fun. If you guys win, it's awesome for the sport because it's a good storyline. But it's not going to happen. Don't come at my head just because I'm willing to recognize that there's a talent gap that for some reason you can't see.
All right. Let me be the level-headed one on this one, okay?
That's surprising. I thought you were going to come in here and start agreeing with me.
No, I actually 100% agree with you, actually. Okay, in my mind, I actually agree with everything that you just said. Here's the counteract to that of where I would shift this.
Okay.
Penn State worries me after you just went up against a 96th ranked passing defense and you couldn't throw the football. Like, it worries me that of all these teams in the playoff, SMU had the worst secondary and you could not throw the ball. You were clunky. Allard did not look good, man. He just did not look good at all. 13 of 22. I guess he had some moments, but Joe, I got to be real with you. What Penn State's going to show up here? Like, what Penn State shows up? Because, Joe, if they can't throw the football in a really bad secondary, it's not out of the realm of question to say that Penn State can – it was just an outlier. Okay, maybe it was an outlier.
It's not an outlier because they've done that all year long.
That's what I was going to say. They've done it all year long. That's the part where I look at this and say, I don't know if Penn State doesn't go out there against another bad secondary and wee down their leg.
But the whole point is that they started really slow against SMU, and then eventually they played as dog shit of a first quarter as you could have. Now they were playing in this in very
2 pick sixes,
right, in very frigid conditions, and you could tell that Drew Aller couldn't grip the football. Like you could tell that the ball was just not coming out of his hand the same way that he usually does. He's not that inaccurate the way that he was in that game, but their talent was so significant along their offensive line that eventually, against a really good, that was one of the best run defenses that Penn State saw all year. Like that's not as far as to say that D-line's really good.
All over them.
It's twice as talented as this Boise State defensive line that's got one good player in Hassanin, who's a quality player and who's going to get an NFL look. They're going to have a much easier time running the football. Blake, I understand the concern, and coming into this game, Boise State, according to team rankings, they're 113th in pass yards allowed, so they're getting an even easier opportunity to throw the football.
That's true. I mean, that secondary for Boise State's really bad. And look, the last time we saw Drew Aller in a dome type situation, was against Oregon with a better team. So you're right. The elements in the weather could have definitely played a factor in it. It definitely affected both of those quarterbacks, and Jennings and Aller. So that's a really good point. Let me get to this. I agree with you on one massive thing. The line of scrimmage is going to be a outright war, and Boise, they're going to have to game plan around not having the bodies up front. The thing with me with Boise everybody's been hanging on to all year has been, we lost by 1 point to Oregon, and we were able to run all over Oregon with Ashton Jeanty. The thing about that, Joe, for me is pretty simple, is that, but Oregon's biggest weakness has been their run defense. Without a doubt. They have had struggle stopping the run. When I look at Penn State, Joe, they're averaging around 200 yards on the ground per game against everybody. Mm-hmm. Literally against everybody. Now, against Ohio State, they weren't able to run the ball, but that's the number one defense in the country that they weren't able to run the ball against. That's a different beast that they're going up here against. If I'm Penn State, it's very, very, very simple. I'm putting 7 to 8 guys in the box, and I'm making Maddox beat us.
I'm putting 9 guys in the box.
Well, you can't.
I know. I mean, I'm over exaggerating.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't do
hyperbolic.
That. But I would definitely stack the box and make them throw and beat me by throwing the football. There is no way in human hell that I'm letting Ashton Jeanty get over 75 yards on me. There's no way.
Look, he's going to have like 100. He's going to have 120 yards. They're going to will him to getting the yards that they need.
I guarantee you he doesn't.
But wait, but look at okay.
He's not going to. I guarantee you he does not have over 120 yards. Because here's the thing: you can focus in on one player, Joe. The only way that Ashton Jeanty. Well, let me back up. Let me not say that, because God forbid he breaks off an 85-yard run.
Someone's gonna. Yeah, don't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't hang yourself out the dry like that.
Yeah, let me back up. The Jeremiah Love situation. Let me throw this your way. What did Indiana do? What did they try to do against Notre Dame? They tried to make They loaded the box. They tried to make Riley Leonard beat him from the pocket. And if we're being honest, when they got in the red zone, that's what they did, and that's why they were able to hold them to field goals. It's the same thing that's going to happen here. I think Ashton Jeanty is a fantastically great player, right? I do.
And he's going to be a top 15 pick. He's very gifted.
Right. But it's just not – Maddox is going to have to go off, Joe. They're going to have to go off. And I don't see a world where that's humanly possible.
Right. Look, and this is what we talked about when Nelson was benched in favor of Maddox. Like, Maddox has done some good things this year.
I forgot about Malachi Nelson. I know. There.
He's played well this year against G5 opponents. Watching what happened to Kevin Jennings, and the only way that Kevin Jennings was able to have any offensive output was for the fact that he's really athletic. And he has this point guard style of play where, he's reading the lane and he's able to try and dish and dunk off to guys that are extending their routes. And that didn't work against Penn State because athletes were everywhere and they were able to pick them off in those situations. Maddox is nowhere near the capable improviser that Kevin Jennings was. That's where like I'm not sitting here and I'm not crazy enough to come in here and say that Ashley Genty doesn't play well. Like I'm not saying that you were crazy for suggesting that and you caught yourself and realized that there's that possibility that he has a 70-yard rushing touchdown. It's like, wow, look at Ashley Genty go. He is a very gifted player. I said in the preseason that he was going to have a huge year. And also, Boise State fans, I predicted that you were going to be the G5 playoff representative at the beginning of the year. But the problem that we now step into is that Maddox is not the type of guy that's going to be able to get away from Abdul Carter and Zane Durant, who's in your face. I just want to quickly revisit, though. You brought up the Oregon game. And I see this overwhelming amount of Boise State fans that keep bringing up, well, how could you say that when we played Oregon so close? It was a 3-point game. That's the number one team in the country.
Idaho also played them close.
Those games at the beginning of the season against G5 and FCS opponents are scheduled with the anticipation that teams are going to have problems that they're trying to work through. This Oregon team specifically that we killed them for, and then now we laud them and we say that they're the best team in the country. They had interior offensive line issues. Dylan Gabriel was still developing chemistry with his receivers. Their defensive line that had new faces like Derek Harmon into the mix, and Mateo Uyunglele was still in his first year as a full-time starter. They were not the same version of Oregon. To make this assumption that teams are static and they don't improve is ridiculous. You played the worst version of Oregon and you played them close. And Oregon schedules that game with anticipation that they're expecting a challenge and they might not play their best football. The week prior that you just mentioned, Blake, they barely beat Idaho by 10 points because they couldn't finish in the red zone. So we need to contextualize. Y'all can put up a banner for playing close against Oregon. Good freaking job. This is not week 2 anymore. This is the college football playoff. And like we saw last week, the best teams with the best coaching staffs come the most prepared. The same shit's not going to happen that happened in week 2.
No, it's not. Brother, I mean, again, no disrespect to the Boise State fan base or team.
Well, they disrespected me, so I could care less at this point.
Well, no disrespect. They don't deserve a bye. Now, the last thing I'm going to throw in here, and I'm interested about all of this. How does these teams that had byes, all 4 of them, Oregon, Arizona State, Boise State, Georgia, how much does that help them? Because I still think that that's a very big deal in this sense. It's a big deal in the sense of that when they were sitting at home eating Cheetos and bonbons, they're eating, these big offensive linemen eating Twinkies. So I know Penn State's not in that, or they didn't get a bye, but there comes a part where, look, man, Penn State, for what it's worth, I mean, we're trying to. I felt like everybody that was coming down on you Boise State fans are using transitive properties with Oregon in the mutual games that they had, right? Like that's what they're trying to do. And I don't think that's fair to do that, but we'll see, man. I think they're going to stack the box and you're going to have to throw the football to win and you're not going to be able to do it. That's how I see it. And your defense is god awful. It's god awful. Okay.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.